or what we already know can be a helpful practice while also capturing some of the not so obvious things that we do. So we all contributed our responses to what services do the libraries offer, and this is just one example of what was captured, although responses were pretty similar between all three employee groups. Then once we documented what it is we do, we then reflected on how we do, answering these four other questions. So what do we do well? What could we do better? What are we not doing? And what could we eliminate? And these are some of the highlighted themes and consistencies that emerged between all of our employee groups. So under what we do well, everybody pretty much said, we're here to support, whether it's through research and resources or just a pat on the back and just saying, hey, we're here. We know we'll help you, whatever we can do for you. And then, of course, adapting to change, especially with our COVID implemented services. We had to scramble, and I think we did a pretty awesome job of doing so. What can we do better? Everybody across the board pretty much agreed communication was one of our issues. So internally, just our communication between our three employee groups or what we refer to as our floors, because faculty are on the second floor and then our staff work on the first floor. So sometimes those communication lines get blurred or sometimes disregarded. And then communication to our external stakeholders. So our marketing, how we get the word out seems to be lacking. But then, of course, these communication discrepancies then lead to potential inconsistencies in service and in the application of library policies. And then what are we not doing? There's multiple things that were mentioned. The highlighted things that came out that pretty much all employee groups mentioned was we haven't been filling vacancies when people retire. So both staff and faculty lines. A big thing too, Wi-Fi hotspots. We've done a great job of, lending laptops, Chromebooks, graphing calculators. The one piece of technology we haven't been able to lend yet are those Wi-Fi hotspots. And then things to eliminate public computers and, public use. We don't seem to have maybe the best resources to help the public. Sometimes it's difficult handling, working with the public. And then also library fines. Which is a nationwide trend right now in libraries to eliminate all library fines because it can be a barrier for students. They might not use resources or services if they have an outstanding fine. Some of the obstacles and challenges that we encountered along the way, the three big ones, time, communication, and data. So we didn't establish a concrete timeline for this project with specific dates for completion of activities, which probably set us back. And then, of course, the cyber attack derailed us a bit, as it did most everyone. And from experience, we tend to try and rush things. So we have to take a time to kind of step back and remind ourselves that assessment can't be rushed. It should be ongoing. And sometimes it's the process you learn from, not the actual data. Then with communication, scheduling meetings can be a challenge in our virtual environment. And then our communication with stakeholders. How do we get the word out? We don't have a means to directly communicate with students. So we need to rely on faculty to relay that information for us, or we use promotional outlets like the library webpage or the phenomenal T-Bird Times that was just created recently that's sent out every week. That's awesome. And then, of course, our data. We collect so much data like we do across the college. A lot of it is not used or it's not made or aggregated and interpreted in a way that's meaningful. And I experienced this myself trying to pull all this data together with the ranking activity. And all the data I pulled, and I actually ended up having to have my husband's Excel expertise to pull it all together and then sit down with my daughter, who's a bit of a statistical junkie, to actually explain it to me and what it meant. So our next steps moving forward will be to share the data we've captured through our information gathering and assessment activities with all library employees and review them as a team, which we're going to be doing in the next few weeks as a big virtual meeting where we're all going to get together and discuss this. And this information and data will be used to help inform our assessment activities moving forward and identify the areas we want to focus on for assessment purposes. And then we need to establish a more formal library assessment team with participants from all of our employee groups within the library and both campuses. And then we're going to convene in the fall and gather all this information, reflect upon it, decide how we're going to use it. And hopefully, one of the things we're thinking of doing is creating a survey tool and facilitate focus groups to capture that stakeholder input and library services. So that's what I have to share so far on what we've accomplished with our assessment project. Does anybody have any questions about this process for me? And if you do not, maybe you do, I've also got a bunch of focus questions that I wanted to open the floor up for chat and feedback. And I'm hoping you all can maybe help me and give me some input. So if you have any questions about my presentation and what we've accomplished so far, please ask away. And if not, I'd like to start asking some of these questions of all of you. So you can either use the chat or you can unmute yourself. And if you have any questions for me. Did you gather any student feedback? Not yet, no. That's what we're going to be doing in the fall. Right now, it's kind of our internal reflection process that we've gone through to just gather all the input from employees that work within the library. And that is our plan in the fall, to gather that student input through surveys, focus groups. Hopefully we'll be back in person and we can maybe get even a little more participation just through interactions in and out of the library. Let's see, gotta open up my chat here. I see there was another question. Oh, absolutely. Yes, please, Julie, touch base with me. I'd love to share. And this is all I've been working blindly and coming up with things as we come along here in this process. So any other questions? If not, I'm going to start asking you all some questions to help me in our process so I can get some ideas of how we can move forward successfully. So if anybody has anything to offer as far as collecting data from stakeholders, if you've ever done this before, how do you do it? And how do you get your stakeholders to participate in things like surveys and focus groups? Any ideas, input, I'd love to hear it. So either use the chat or you can feel free to speak, unmute yourself. Pizza, okay. Pizza works. Yeah, it is the hardest part, getting participation. I'll be happy to share my slides, absolutely. Instead of a fine, how about a survey? I love it, Tim. Thank you. Yeah, let's erase your fines if you complete our survey or participate in our focus group. That's awesome.
I know one thing they've been trying to do at GCC is with the like one-off sessions, they have the library instructor conduct an assessment of the student learning that occurred in that. And I don't know if they've done it actually yet, but they talked a little bit about coordinating with the faculty member whose class it is and going in through Canvas and doing like institutional outcome assessment on the library items through the faculty member's Canvas site.
Yep. Yep. Good idea. I'm sorry, I'm reading some of the things that people have in here. Yeah. Yeah. And you get entered in a drawing when you complete a survey or you win. Yeah. We've done that before. We actually did a student survey when we were remodeling our classroom. And that was one thing that we did. There was, a drawing, and students got like a baggie full of, swag. Of course, evaluate. Yeah. Okay. I'm just reading through everything here. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. I don't want to infringe on Brian and Megan's time. But so as far as communication preferences, so one of the issues that we have in the library is communication. So getting the word out to our stakeholders, because we only teach, a few credit classes every year. We don't have that direct access to students. So the only way that we get the word out is asking faculty to please promote, our services, or relay information on events to students, through their courses. That's about it, other than, putting things on our library webpage, or, the T-Bird Times, which they send out, to faculty to hopefully push to their students. Um, and same thing with getting the word out to even faculty, and staff throughout the college. How do you receive your communication? So as far as what services the college offers, I'm curious to know what is your preferred method for communication? Do you read the intranet? Do you prefer an email? Are there other methods for you to get this information, or something that, I don't know, some magical tool for communicating that we just have not yet, been able to use? So the intranet. Okay. Everybody always says nobody reads the intranet. I do. It's one of the first things every morning I open up my email. It's there. Keep myself updated. Yes. Okay. It's good to see that you all read the intranet. That's fabulous. Anything else I'm missing? Any other means? Any other way you can recommend, that we can reach out to students? Text alerts. Okay. Students. Saw something about students there. That they did not know that they can talk. Exactly. This is our problem. So Amber said students often state they did not know that they can talk to a librarian online through the library website, and they can also link on Canvas for students. Right. So students don't know these things. There are so many students that have no idea that we have a 24/7 Ask a Librarian service, that they can schedule research consultations with us. They can email us. That's the issue. How do we let them know, when we don't have direct access? That's something, and maybe administration. I don't know if I know we've always been told we can't ever directly email students. Is there any way, just once a semester, all student service areas can get together and put something together to just send directly to students so they know, maybe with our new, student services model, or new student orientation, if there's some way, for us to get that word out to them so they know what's available. Yeah, and we do go into classrooms. We do, yes, we do. And we do online library instruction. So yeah, great idea. Yes, requiring assignments of your students to use library resources. Okay, excellent. Okay, so my final question that I'm very curious about, now that, we have all had to adapt so many of our services because of COVID, that's one of the things, in the library. Are we going to continue offering all of our COVID implemented services now that we're, working our way back to, an in-person face-to-face format? So I'm curious if everybody still plans to continue all of those same services. And if so, are there going to be any staffing constraints now that we're going back to that, face-to-face model? Is this going to impede on, time and resources of your staff having to now do both, face-to-face and COVID implemented virtual services? I'm curious to see. So Laura, you're saying these are all things that we should have been offering anyways, right?
Yes, I've been fighting that fight for a long time.
Yeah.
So this was actually a really good way to get it going. And I've talked to our leadership about we need to actually have these be maintained. Yeah,
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. It's brought light to us in the library on things such as, how do you access textbooks? How do you access, our physical resources? So, we did the curbside services. So will we continue that? When students are able to come back into the library, and then also textbooks, because we have a huge reserve collection that's all in print. Our way of accommodating that during COVID was scanning, under what we could under, copyright restrictions, but what are we going to do now? Are we going to, somehow have an ebook, textbook, resource? Yeah. Yes, OER is awesome. Okay. More Z degrees, that's right. Okay, any more questions? This is great. I really appreciate everyone's feedback and your responses to my focus questions. I should share my last slide with some of my research. I am a librarian, so I have to show my evidence-based practice research. Here it is. And I'll gladly share, my slides and everything. And this is being recorded, so I'll get to see how I did too. It's always nice to be able to go back and watch yourself.